All right. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to COSS Journeys episode 2. If it's your first time here, we meet and chat with cool commercial open source software founders and team people to try and understand a little bit more about the journey related to building a viable open source startup in the modern world, and something kind of sustainable for the future. COSS has been a major growth over the years. We've had some real pioneers dating all the way back to the early 90s, and some very modern examples that we're hoping that we'll bring on at some point in the coming weeks. This here is episode 2, and today we are meeting with someone who I think this is gonna be a really cool episode. We're going to have a lot of interesting discussions. If it is your first time here and you're wondering what is COSS and what is commercial open source software, then check out the Discord that we have. It's cos.fyi/D for Discord. And we share a lot of information, a lot of questions around defining what is COSS and how people can start to get involved with building their own software, releasing it as a viable paid product, and hopefully making it into a sustainable income source for them, or even into a mega startup if that's what they wish. So I mentioned I've got a really cool guest with me here today. And I have someone that I've spoken to quite a few times. We've had a few crazy discussions. Felix, the founder and CEO of Hanko.io. And that actually rolls off the tongue really, really quite nicely. So Felix, welcome to episode number 2. I would have loved to bring you onto episode number 1, but at the end of the day, the numbers don't matter. What matters is the product and the team and the project and the aim behind everything. So yeah, I'm gonna fire away a few questions. This isn't an interview. This is just a friendly chat. And what we're trying to understand with this discussion today is, what is your journey into being a COSS commercial open source software? What are the things that you kind of learned along the way? What are the things that you kind of learned a little bit late, or you wish that you'd known earlier? We just want to dive into like what it's like building a commercial open source software startup.
There's a lot to talk about. Yes.
It's a lot to talk about. And for everyone who's just tuning in now, these aren't one-time interviews or questions or meetings. We're going to try and meet up regularly with people to catch up on the journey and find out the latest information, find out what they did different, how they've changed things. So I'm really glad to have Felix here because they've had quite an interesting background and start. So before we dive into the business, Felix, what's your developer background? Because just before the call, you told me something very cool. And maybe you're open to talk a little bit about that, about some other projects that you've had, and a little bit about your development background in general.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having me today. It's really cool that you're kicking this off. I'm not the first. It may have to do with my calendar issues, with my scheduling. I've been quite busy the past few weeks. Oktoberfest visit was also possible. It was very fun last week. Just been to Code Camp. This was something we started back in my old company that I started before Hanko, quite a few years back. I think it's 11 years ago when we started the first company. It's called Cap 3 or Cap 3 in German. It's like a software agency. We started it right while still at university. Three other guys and me. Building software for money. We had no idea. We had no connection. We had no network. We had no product. We just wanted to build software and meet cool customers and do our thing. And that's what we did. And I was studying computer science then, and was a developer. So this is how things started. When we got the first projects, we got the first customers. Quickly it became clear that someone has to do all the nasty other stuff: project management, Bill actually invoice the customers,
The boring
talk
stuff, but the
the
stuff that
boring
makes the
stuff,
money. Not the
find new projects, go
Yeah.
network, and all these things. And somehow I was there and I did it. So this is where I left the developing
Okay.
itself. I left it so quite a few years ago, and somehow it stayed this way. So yeah, and
So
to finish this off, right? I mentioned Code Camp. This is what we did last weekend. Just came back yesterday. It's 4 days, like a company offsite, but focused on building cool stuff. So it's really it's like work, but everyone can bring their own projects. You can work, of course, on we worked on Hanko, of course, but this is an event my old company is organizing, and we can still join. We're invited, and that's a cool thing. And we just did that.
okay. So you your career from very early on was in development and technology, and then
Yes.
you transitioned to more of the leadership and kind of the business side of development business, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that.
Now you mentioned that this previous project, like you're still into like that. It's a weekend kind of coding camp, like
Yeah,
a
code camp,
get together, a meeting.
4 days, big house in Denmark with a pool
Okay.
and ping pong table and everything.
How much
But
time was spent
also,
coding versus playing?
I don't know. I don't know. No, it's again right. Myself, I worked on Hanko all the time. Basically, we
Yeah.
launched cool things. We will talk about that later, probably. But yeah, others just have fun all the time. So
Yeah.
it's like to your personal taste how you want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to say to the people joining us live, we have Java Grunt joining, saying hello, asking questions about the GPL. We can cover some of those things a little bit later on, Java. We also have Kronark, Kronark Andreas.
And
Many
this-
people know the name. Very few people have seen or heard him. Maybe we'll bring him on at one point. Maybe we'll do a
you could.
COSS Journeys, the legendary people, and bring them on with their just for a bit more of their story to understand. But okay, so you transitioned from more of a developer into more of a business, and that was at the previous organization. Is that correct?
Yeah, already. I mean, it was probably after the first year or so when we started in, when was it, 2010 or 11? I can't even remember. But when we started this, like I brought some of the first customers with me. I knew them from before, very little to be honest. We didn't have much going on back in the day,
Okay.
but it grew quickly, and someone had to do the other stuff. And I think after a year or so, I was not actively involved in producing code.
Okay.
I mean, I remember one week where I spent the whole week writing one big SQL query because we had to connect to a proprietary and very ancient, very legacy database, and it was crazy. But we had to
Yeah.
write a new backend adapter for it, and somehow we had to get to and write to the data structure that was there, the old model. And yeah, that was crazy, and I still remember it. And somehow I had to do it because the other guy said, "Okay, you brought this customer, you brought this to us, solve it, please."
It's
So I
your
did.
mess. You clean it up,
It's your mess,
basically.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
did. It worked. It worked out pretty well.
And
But yeah, I mean,
now with Hanko, are you
yeah.
still are you actually back to actively coding, or are you more focused more on the business side,
Um, I'm
or is it a
focused on the
mix?
business side. I'm
Okay.
focused on the business side. I'm not actively contributing to the code.
Okay,
That's
that's very
right.
interesting.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that there's always the perception in open source projects and products and software that the team is made up of the contributors. And if this is something that hopefully over the coming years, I know a lot of people are very vocal about this, is that finding the ways in which people can contribute to open source without it be having to be code. There's a lot of other people that contribute stuff to open source. Maybe it's in design, or maybe it's in educational material. There's a lot of
Yeah.
ways that people can contribute to open source. And I think it's important as well for open source founders of COSS businesses to realize that, hey, it's not just like code. Your open source, like anyone can write code. Like there's a billion great products and projects on GitHub. But if they don't have the rest of the whole package around it and they're not building the community around the whole product and service, then they won't get the adoption that they need. And I think, like, from sitting and looking, I've been following Hanko for, I don't know, quite a while now. I think around a year was the first time that I kind of really dived deep into it. Maybe even over a year. I can't remember. I'm getting older and time is losing concept for me. But I think it's been very interesting to see Hanko's growth over that last year, and to see how things have started to change and how the community has been getting more and more involved in stuff. And we'll dive into a few examples and a few key things later on. But before we get a little bit too sidetracked, which happens all the time with me, I am not a train on rails. I am a paper plane being blown in the wind. Let's talk. I mean, you seem to have a lot of experience in terms of the business side of things and setting up things. You mentioned it was 2011 or 2012. I'm glad to meet someone who's also my age. Let me just say, maybe. But what's the craziest thing that you realized then over those years when it came to building a business or having a business around a developer product or a developer service? Because I think the previous thing was a developer service. You were offering development as a service. And here you're actually offering a product as a service or a software as a
Yeah.
service. And what's the craziest thing or the craziest realization that you had in the difference of those two? There's a lot of people coming from agency backgrounds. There's a lot of people coming from different backgrounds
Yeah.
in different places. So yeah, what's the biggest lesson that you learned? Or what's the biggest thing that you went, oh shit, like this is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can come up with this one story right now, but we may come to it.
We can always circle back to it later on. If it comes to you in like
Yeah, yeah,
20
yeah.
minutes, just be like, Omar, I've got this story. And we'll
But I
come back
think,
to it.
I mean, I think what I like about my journey the most is there's always something new. And for the first few years, these were new customers with completely new projects and requirements I never saw, I never thought about before. So this was really fulfilling, learning all these new problems and solve them. Build a good team to be able to do that. This was like my first few years, and I really wanted to do a product. So this is what drove me towards starting Hanko. Also, the experience in our actual projects, we had recurring issues with authentication, with passwords. Actually, as there were problems, high support costs at one customer specifically, with forgotten passwords and the process to reset them. Everyone knows it. So we had these issues, and it led me to build Hanko. What I think on the one hand, I was looking forward to it, to learn new things, as I was mentioning. On the other hand, just because you build software for a living, it doesn't mean you know what a software developer wants. It's not necessarily true. You may know like your problems you have with other tools. It really depends on what you've used before. So building software for money as an agency, it's very different to building software for developers. And now for just very recently, right? Our journey into open source, it's not that old. It's just 1.5 years. So it's a very young project, and no one from the team, myself included, had any real experience with open source before. So like very little contributions have been made by the team. Before that, no project that we ran ourselves as individuals or as the company. So was like our first real effort into open source is Hanko. So we said, okay,
Okay.
we learn on the way. And I mean, first Hanko started as a proprietary solution. in the authentication space that is already very crowded. So that was probably not a good idea. It was always under the big goal was always to replace passwords. But how you can do that, there are many different ways how you can help developers achieve this goal at some point. And our first approach to this was a proprietary solution, an API powering working as a passkey backend. Basically, it wasn't even called passkey back in the day, the password replacement, but that's how we started things off. No one wanted this because it was too early, and so we built our way up into what Hanko is today. And I think the biggest learning was the open source world now specifically. There's been so many new things that I really love, but I had no idea about before. But also, again, developer tool is very different to building software.
So it's a very, very interesting story, and we'll dive into it a little bit more. But just for some context, because we've got Java Grant asking in the live chat here, what is Hanko?
Yeah.
Do you want to give us
Good
the this? I mean, I can read it out. But
No. I mean,
what is Hanko? Because for when you say like, oh, there's an authentication system, the first thing that comes to a lot of people's minds is, oh, okay, there's a lot. Like there's a lot of different places, and there's a lot of drop-in solutions. There's a lot of like crazy authentication solutions. So do you wanna cover in your own words what is Hanko, and then I'm gonna add on to that my perception of what I saw when I heard of Hanko, and hopefully then this will provide some good context for some of the upcoming questions that we're gonna have.
Yeah. What is Hanko? It is an authentication solution that is open source. I think that's like the one-liner. Our secret sauce is passkeys. So we built Hanko specifically for passkey authentication. This is a new technology that has found its way into all our browsers and operating systems already. Not everyone knows about it. I can't blame you for that. But it's a pretty big deal, and Google, Apple, and Microsoft are pushing this really hard, sometimes behind the scenes, but they start to be very open and vocal about it as well for a few months now. It is supported on all our devices, and it basically is the replacement for passwords. And
Okay.
we saw the opportunity so big that when over the coming few years, every login has to work on this. There's no way around it. And what can we do to make this change as simple and as rewarding, basically, for the developer as possible? And that is how Hanko came to be. And if you maybe a last sentence to this, if you visit the website tomorrow or sometime later this week, I'm not quite sure, we've worked on our messaging a bit, and we will go a bit broader. So it's an authentication solution. It's for passkeys, but it is open, right? There you see it. That's the new page. I don't know if it went live at this moment. Probably did. It was.
I mean, I just refreshed,
That's
and
funny. That's so funny. You just witnessed the launch of our new
like,
landing page.
yeah, there we go. First, you guys are seeing it before Felix even sees it.
Oh, that's very good timing. I have to
This is
say, I
perfect. Yeah.
wasn't expecting this, but yeah. So open authentication is our new slogan,
Okay, that is
and
brilliant.
there will be more stuff below it that's not quite ready. That will come tomorrow or the day after, but it will center around this. We are open, right? It is open source, and the solution that we provide is also very customizable, very friendly towards the framework or the technology you are using. I hope you are not restricted in any way when using Hanko. That is our biggest goal. Make it open. Everything is open source, and you can customize this to your wishes. But also, it is with developer experience in mind. So it is, if you take what we give you, it is very, very easy to set up. I think
So
that's the gist, and I hope it it aligns with your impression.
definitely, I mean, I I am someone who takes security very seriously. And like to the degree where I have not one, I have one here. This is my YubiKey, and it probably doesn't show properly on the screen, but like my YubiKeys are labeled. I have that
P1.
many YubiKeys that my YubiKeys are labeled. Okay, I have P1, P2, P3, primary 1, 2, and 3,
Nice.
and then I have B1, B2, B3. I have more YubiKeys than I do house keys. So yeah, exactly.
Does it
So
focus?
I take my security quite seriously, and there's one thing that really attracted me to Hanko, and that is the fact that it's not just about my own personal security. It's about the security of users who use my service or use my product. There's a lot of great authentication systems out there. There's a massive list. Like we can go through them. Okta, which is more enterprise focused. We have Auth0, which is terrible branding because so many people get mixed up between OAuth and Auth0 and end up signing
Oh
up
yes.
for a service that they didn't need to sign up for, and then developers implement the wrong npm package, and then production crashes. True story. It actually
Okay.
happened. Jerry, if you are listening to this, I still feel bad about it. But yeah, there's a lot of authentication systems, but a lot of them are, as you mentioned, closed. Or even the ones that are open end up implementing security in a way that is what I will call the most compatible and the most like, what does everybody want right now? In the sense of they may take some, or they may not implement certain services, they may not implement certain features or certain security features into the service because they want to make sure that they support Node version 12, for example. There's some things that people take. However, with Hanko, when I looked deeply into Hanko, it's practically like the authentication layer, like the actual kind of code that's there, is built as close to the standards as possible to support everything as best as possible. But again, as you mentioned, it's open. Like it's fully open. Like I have a fork of Hanko. I think I actually have a fork of Hanko. And I have modified some stuff in there. It crashed. I couldn't build it because I don't know Go, but we'll come to that a bit later. But one of the great things about Hanko is that it's a very forward-looking, and passkeys is now coming in as the alternative signing in method without usernames and passwords. And I mentioned without usernames and passwords. And I need to stop giving thumbs up. These bubbles appear out of no. I don't know which software in my system does this.
That's fun.
And now I'm frozen, apparently. So it gave me bubbles, and now I froze. Hold on, Felix. I'm sorry. I'll be back in like 10 seconds. I think you can still hear me.
I can still hear you, and I took over your screen as well, it seems. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I should be coming back any second now. There we go. Okay, so if I give thumbs up, my screen crashes. Anyway, so Hanko provides the smoothest passkey implementation I've seen anywhere. And passkey is essentially, we're getting some questions in the chat here. Passkey is essentially using the devices, your local devices, built in cryptographic signing procedures, whether they are Apple Face ID, the Apple, I don't know what they call the fingerprint ID, whether it's Windows Hello facial recognition or Android sign in with fingerprint or face recognition or Face ID, etc. It's utilizing those to sign a cryptographic request that forwards that request back to. I'm going way like I'm out of my depth here,
You
Felix,
do my
but like
job very well.
essentially the website which has the passkey service will make a request to the local device and say, hey, do you have any users who want to sign in with my service with this ID number? This is essentially my identifier. your computer will then go and look through its list of passkeys that is previously created and be like, hey, we have a user who wants to sign into this service. Let's verify that this user is on the device. It does its local signing, and after that's done, then it sends across back to the website, hey, this user has authenticated that they are who they say they are. And like all of... Is that right?
That's right.
That's right. Okay. You had a bit of a suspicious look. I was like, oh shit.
No, sorry, it was a different thing.
Yeah.
I was testing actually a passkey login in the background, so maybe we show it.
Actually,
But
that's
everything,
a perfect thing. Yeah. So I will. Let me actually open it up. What is it? You used to have the link to your. Where is it gone? There used to be the link to the demo page.
passkeys.io.
That's it, passkeys.io. I always put in passkeys.dev. So a passkey is basically just an alternative to username and password. So here we are on a demo site. If I click sign in with passkey, I don't have a username. I haven't input a username. I haven't input a password. I'm going to click sign in with passkey. And right now it's asking me to... That's a very, very, very good point. I thought I was still showing. I apologize, people. Let's try this again. Okay, so here we go. Try the passkey demo. So I'm going to click sign in with passkey. I don't have a passkey saved to this browser. However, I do have one saved to my phone. So what I'm going to do now is go into my phone's camera. Here we go. And I'm going to scan a QR code. And you can, just so you guys can see it on the screen there. It says connecting to your device. It asks me if I want to authenticate with which user. I will choose my user, Face ID, and that's it. Now I'm signed in here. And so I've managed to sign in without putting in a username or password. On my device, I actually selected which user I want. I can also save passkeys to multiple locations. So right now I'm saving a passkey back to this browser. I can save another passkey if I wanted to, like to somewhere else. I'm just going to save another one over here. And then essentially any time that I want to sign in or out from this device, I have a passkey synchronized across with my cloud system. And now I can come in and I can sign and I can say, hey, yeah, I want to sign in with this account. No username, no password. I just use my fingerprint, or with my phone, it was with Face ID, and I am logged into my account. And nobody can log into this. Nobody can get into my account. I don't have any backup methods.
That's a perfect demo. Thank you very much.
I don't have any things. I don't need to carry around, and I have photos of me carrying around my security key into various random locations.
One addition.
RIP. Sorry?
You could also store a passkey on your YubiKey if you want that, right? It's
Yeah,
the same
so
protocol.
like I'll sign in right now, and I'll actually need to insert, it's covered in dust right now. I recently moved all of my accounts over. So I will say I'm going to add a passkey, and I'm going to save it to my USB security key. Touch, and we'll just set up.
We require user verification. That's what you're setting up right now. Yeah, the key didn't have it, so we require it.
So I can also rename this key, and I can call this one here my YubiKey 5CP1. I have a naming scheme for my security stuff. And there we go. So now if I sign out, I'm going to click sign in with a passkey. Choose a different device, USB security key, and now I just touch it. Try to remember the PIN code that I put. And done. And I'm signed into my account. So that was the beauty of Hanko, is that Hanko didn't just come out for me personally and say, hey, you can only do A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. Like we are enforcing this system. You can't do A, B, C. You have to follow exactly how we want. I love the flexibility of it. And just for clarity and just for full transparency, I'm using Hanko in production. And I intend to use Hanko in production until I no longer need security or I no longer have a production. But one of the great things about it, just for clarity and just to to cover some additional stuff. It's not just about passkeys. It's not just about being able to support passkeys. There's other backup methods such as passcodes. So you can also have like full-on user account recovery systems added in. You can have OAuth login as well with Google, GitHub, Microsoft, and I believe quite a few others on the way coming out soon. So yeah, this is just a very quick kind of look into Hanko. There's the pre-made authentication components, which is essentially drop-in components that render this section here. And you can drop that into any single page and you can do it on any page. Or if you want full control, there's also the front-end SDK where you create all of your own components and do everything you need. But yeah, like this is Hanko. So now for the rest of the call, while we reference Hanko, I think people will understand what we're talking about. Someone is actually asking the question, did I mention Go? Yes. So Java Grunt, it's written in Go. Can you correct me if I'm wrong? The backend is written in Go.
The backend. We have a REST
end,
API that is written in Go. Front end is so the front end. What does it mean? It's the components you just mentioned. It's the pre-made web components that you can place into your app wherever you want. We're thinking about providing native components for React and the other frameworks as well in the future. But of course, this is quite an overhead. So we're focusing on the web components currently. I mean, they work everywhere with maybe a few little tweaks. For example, server-side rendering with Next, you have to say use client. I mean, it's not a big deal, but you have to for the web for the page that loads the web component. Just a limitation of the technology. But it works well, and it's also running in production. So these components are Preact, set up with Preact, and it's written in TypeScript, of course. So this is like the two main things of Hanko.
Perfect. Yeah. So I mean, if you're looking for a authentication solution, do your research. I am a very strong believer in never just taking advice at face value. You have different requirements to what I have, to what everyone else has. I believe Hanko is the best tool that exists out there right now for future-proof as kind of an authentication system. I am a very happy user and customer of Hanko as well. I'm saying actual customer of Hanko. But yeah, the technology itself is in its infancy, and it's very amazing to have such a dedicated open source system built around the security. And you guys are also a FIDO Alliance compliance.
Yeah.
Partner.
I mean, the what is passkeys now? It's a long time in the making, right? This didn't pop up overnight. It's like 10 years or so, an ongoing effort of so many different players, mostly Google, Apple, Microsoft lately, pushing this. And yeah, it's the FIDO Alliance doing this work. And well, we've been part of the FIDO Alliance also for like 5 years or so, working groups and I don't know, white papers. So from the very early days on, and now it's called passkeys, and it has become very consumer friendly. That's quite cool.
And I think that's where kind of being open source has, because you mentioned earlier, we touched on already, getting back now to the subject of like the building of this business. You mentioned earlier that you guys weren't initially open source, and then there was a period where you transitioned into becoming open source. That's a very interesting approach, because I think it's a little bit like there's generally two approaches that we see right now with commercial open source. Those who start, where's my hand? There it is. Those who start completely open source from the ground up, like start to build up open source, and others who come in maybe and they will build some stuff closed source, and then they start to release and scale back what's closed and transition to more open. So how was that for you guys? How was the transition for you? And what inspired you to go from closed to open?
So
hard question, I can see.
No, it's I mean, it's like our story, right? We started proprietary and built a software maybe ill-advised that was very microservice-y. So each deployment consisted of like 6 services that had to be orchestrated, and that's all in the past, right? Please be aware of that. But that's how we started. And at some point when we decided, okay, we want to go the open source way, because, right, what was the motivation? First of all, when do you decide for an authentication solution? It is usually when you start your project. And this is done by a developer somewhere in the world researching this. And there's no better way to convey trust at this moment than to be fully open source. Period. We figured that out, but it took us a while. So that's the most important reason. Also, at that time, I mean, that's it's no secret. Per is also someone I know pretty well from Care.com. We talked lots about this, about our go to market strategy, and like building developer trust, putting out a product that is actually fun to work on. All these things influenced us heavily, and that was the point where we decided, okay, our future is open source. And unfortunately, at that point, we had to start from scratch. So we killed everything we had done before. We killed these products we had. We had actual customers running it. We got real money for hosting this, and we had other customers at that point in the pipeline or working on integrations, and we had to tell them it's a strategic decision, but we start from scratch. And sorry, we will continue serving you with what you have right now, but we won't develop it any further, because the future is here, and that is our plan. And we had to start from scratch, and we did. This was in January, February last year. And
that's a very interesting. I think it's very interesting to hear how you essentially, it's not just pivoting the business, but it's essentially kind of like restarting. Like
it was a restart, you could say,
like that. Completely like deleting the folders, deleting everything, and kind of restarting.
It's still not deleted, right? We still have customers running it, and they still get security patches, but we do a different.
But that's it. Like in terms of the previous products that existed, they are no longer maintained. It's just security patches, as you said.
Yeah.
And you started fresh. So I guess, like, I assume that you carried a lot of the knowledge and experience and ideas through from the previous product into the new one. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that helped us, of course, a great deal. I mean, yes, the code was lost, if you want, but the experience and the knowledge, we could do it completely different and so much better than the first time.
Okay.
Yeah. We had an opportunity to do a full rewrite. I mean, should you do it? I don't know. There are situations honestly, where you shouldn't.
There's a lot of software startups that wish that they could just go and do a full rewrite.
Yeah, probably.
Like, I've worked like with teams where we've been in the situation where we realize, okay, this is just not working. Like, we're constantly chasing our tails. We're constantly putting out fires. We're constantly doing whatever. It takes us 20 hours to do something that would otherwise take us 5 minutes if we took the time to start fresh and rebuild from the ground up. Because it's always the way, you know. And I guess kind of not just in software development, but in many things in life. You don't know what the end result is going to be. You don't know what you need along the way, but you need to take decisions now in order to support an unknown future. And that's where then, you know, when the future happens, you're like, okay, I'm standing on one leg holding 20 plates above my head. You know, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something else. So I think it's very interesting. Go ahead.
This is still an issue, right? I mean, this is the new stuff. It's so much better now, and it is. But still, there are things we have to rewrite now, and right, we are just working on an API overhaul, right?
Yeah,
make it more flexible, more like the Flow API, and this is so cool. But I wanted to say it never ends. It never
Yeah,
ends.
I think it's always a part of like the natural progression, the natural
Yep.
kind of life cycle. And this is maybe why we see, in contrary to a lot of open source businesses, we see a lot of larger organizations start to slow down in terms of
Yes.
their development velocity, in terms of a lot of their stuff, because they're carrying a lot of this technical debt that is impossible for them to get rid of because they don't have the support in the community and the technology there. They're like, yeah, we'll keep running Angular version 2 in production in 2025. It's fine, or, guys, the jQuery library has crashed again. Can someone else please down? Like these are actual real examples that I've had. But yeah, so in the natural life cycle of any product or any service, you're going to need to do these refreshes. You're going to need to do these kind of essential things. And it's interesting that you guys chose at the same time to kind of go into open source, and essentially your first rewrite, your first rebuild of the system was in that transition from closed source to
Yeah.
open source. Was there anything that you ended up having to leave behind because it didn't work with the open source kind of system? Is there anything that you thought maybe we shouldn't do this because it wouldn't work in or with, or there's no demand for it in open source? Was there anything you left behind?
I mean, we also changed a bit how we think of our customers, because the current Hanko that you demoed so nicely, it is targeted towards indie hackers, individuals starting new projects, startups starting new projects, and maybe an architect in a bigger company. But I mean, this is something we work really hard to go up market, of course. But currently, we target. I mean, we have $9 per month base fee. It is. I won't say cheap, but it is very friendly pricing. And so this is also something we changed because we figured out, if we go open source, if we want to have the biggest impact and really put in a lot of value for so many projects that get started every day, this is the way. And before that, we were very enterprise focused. So we approached bigger customers with this, and yeah, it was not so much fun. So we decided, okay, let's go the bottoms up way, and try to reach and help as many folks as possible. So this is also something we changed. I don't think it was required to do that because of open source or anything. I think it was just the opportunity is so much bigger. So that's why we did it. Yeah. Aside from that, no, not really. No, no hurdles that we had. I mean, of course, right? Without open source, we could have used our old product and built on that.
Yeah.
Because of open source, right? We said, okay, this is not something we would want to give someone now. And I still think this was the absolute correct decision, right? In so many situations, when I see other open source founders starting up, they say, okay, it's not good enough. I don't want to launch it. It's not good enough. To that, I say, launch as soon as possible. There's no better moment than today or tomorrow, maybe, but then you have to launch. You want the feedback as early as possible. You want to start building your community as early as possible. That is a different story. But we did so much already, and we know so many things weren't right. We said, okay, we do the new thing. But we did the new thing. We started with an empty project, with an empty public project, and we we started with that. It was available from day zero, and we launched very early on Product Hunt. That was also awesome, and gave us like the 1,000-star threshold we achieved with the Product Hunt launch with a very basic early version.
Yep.
I highly recommend it to go out as soon as possible.
So it's I think we could maybe have a whole just trying to keeping my eye on the time. We could maybe have a whole kind of episode maybe diving a little bit deeper into the transition and kind of the not just the logistical side of it, but also you mentioned, you had clients and how you had to kind of deal with them, how you had to kind of make agreements with them. I don't know what the funding situation was at the time, but I'm sure maybe there were other conversations that had to be had there. But also the emotional, like it's not easy to suddenly be like, okay, after a few years, you know what, we're gonna have to stop and restart. So maybe we can come back and we can do another episode at some point in the future, kind of
Anytime.
diving a little bit more into the transition from closed or proprietary into open, and kind of understand a little bit more about that, because there's a lot of people out there, and I've spoken to a few people who didn't know that it's viable to build an open source business, and they started off proprietary because they didn't know that, hey, it's possible, hey, there's systems in place, there's licenses in place, there's communities in place of, you don't have to build a proprietary business, you can still build an open business. And so I think for a lot of people in the future, this transition from proprietary to open will be a very interesting thing for them. It will be something that maybe fills in the blanks for them. Because as you said, like we said with the authentication, like there's people, new projects, new developers, whatever. Okay, they may be out looking for a solution, and this is who you're currently targeting right now to kind of build up a little bit more. And in a way, I see it as kind of like testing in production, like guinea pigging or dog fooding with your own customers. But yeah, it's fine to start up a commercial open source business from scratch from the initial idea, but transitioning later on, this is always a harder thing. So we'll come back maybe a little bit later on and cover this. Before we run out of time, though, and as I said, yeah, we could have some really cool conversations here. I want to talk a little bit about. So you mentioned some of your early strategies. So you said launch as early as possible. This is something that I'm still pulling a lot of my hair out, because I'm getting a lot of messages from people like, "Hey Omar, when is Uninbox launching?" Soon, trademark. We are currently the 2nd of October 2023. It will be launching very, very imminently in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. But
So
you
looking
mentioned
forward to that.
you mentioned that some of the early kind of tactics that you did for your launch, you mentioned Product Hunt. Did you
Yeah,
also do
that's
things like Hacker News, or did you do something else that?
again, right. It was all new to us, and I think I'm not the best at researching everything and then just do what everyone else is doing. I figured, okay, let's do it at my pace, and we
Okay.
we launched on Product Hunt because we always wanted to do it, and we did. That was something we focused on, and it gave us lots of attention and lots of stars, and that was the key metric at that point. And more developers in the community. We did not do Hacker News. I mean, there have been a few posts about us and about the Passkeys.io demo page, but this was not. We didn't do it. But it's always a very nice traffic spike when that happens. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe with the new message, the open authentication message that that works for passkeys as well, right? I mean, this is how we came up with this term. It is a cool technology that works, like, for example, Apple Pay or sign in with Apple. These more or less proprietary technologies that we all can use. But a passkey is something, as a service provider, as a provider of the login, you control. There's no third party involved. Even
Yep.
if it looks like it goes through Apple because of Face ID or whatever, there's no third party involved. It is you that has the public key and the credentials of the user data and everything, and it is the user device that has the credentials stored, and that's it. There's no one else involved. So this is also, it's a very open technology. It's a completely open standard, and just the big vendors, they have to build it into their systems, but that's it.
Yep.
It's like a
And they are right
somewhere.
now. Like Google
Yeah.
has started to implement it into their services, but both Apple and Microsoft have been very active at bringing passkeys to more of a reality. I think Linux is still one of the things that's suffering, falling back a little
Yeah,
bit behind, but that's just partially because it's such a fragmented system that it's
it
like
is. Yeah.
it's all been like solutions built on top of other dependencies and solutions and stuff. So it's got to work up throughout the whole tree in order for it to come into a reality there.
The browsers made it possible that you can use the YubiKeys
Yep.
on to store your passkeys, and that may be enough for many, especially in the Linux community. I mean,
Yep.
it's your own hardware, and there's no browser running on the YubiKey, and there's no known hacks to crack it
To take
basically. So
advantage of it.
you could say it's the most secure way to use a passkey. So you can do that on Linux. There's no
Yep.
platform authenticator. That's how
And
it's
there's
called.
also like the camera authenticators with iOS and Android anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sure like that still works. You just don't get the native OS based kind of
No, I think it's limited to storing the
yeah.
pass on Linux. It's limited to storing the passkeys on these hardware security keys. There are other vendors as well. It doesn't need to be YubiKey. There are open source solutions as well. Everything is based on the open source and the open protocol of WebAuthn and Fido. But the YubiKey hardware, for example, someone asked this I think a while ago here in this chat. It's proprietary hardware if you want.
Yep.
They do it for security reasons. You could argue if that's a good idea, but yeah.
So before we come to a close, we gave a little bit of a demo. I wish we had some more time because it would have been nice to kind of essentially get it fully deeply integrated because I think it's one of the easiest authentication systems I've ever worked with or ever integrated. Let's talk a little bit before we come to a close about the the community side of things. So you mentioned that in the beginning you guys were kind of I will call it flying blind, essentially. Like this, you didn't know what to do. You didn't know how things are going. You mentioned that you know Pierre from Cal.com, the founder of Cal.com. I believe you guys are in the same city as well. The magic open source capital of Europe, which is apparently a little place in Germany close to the border with Denmark. I don't know. Maybe there's something in the water over there. But how have things been for you as a founder? Like, have you felt a sense of community in terms of from other open source founders, but also how have you been learning from others and building out your own community, building out your own, like the Hanko community? I've seen you've been bringing in a lot of cool people. You've now got your hackathons, Hacktober, hackathon, whatever,
All
Hacktober.
of that, Omar, I can explain.
Okay,
It's
go
three
ahead.
things that's going on currently, and it's of course a perfect way to build on the community that we have and make it much more impactful. We figured the Hacktoberfest is a very cool event. We participate in that, so we have Hacktoberfest labels on some issues in our GitHub repo. Please take a look if you want to contribute. That would be very welcome. We also participate in something of our friends of Novu uh, uh, created a few years ago. It's called Hack Squad. It's basically Hacktoberfest that you can work in squads, in team of up to 5 people, work on more complex tasks maybe, but also get bigger prizes for it. And like swag sent out and very active community on Discord. Hack Squad is quite cool. We sponsor this event, so because we like the idea to build something on top of Hacktoberfest, and so it just kicked off yesterday. It's very fun seeing what's going on there. Also, highly recommended to check this out. And on top of that, I mean, why not? We launched our own hackathon just yesterday, where we said, okay, we have a bit a bit more even complex things we wanna see being built, and we can do it because it's like using frameworks we have no idea how to use. For example, building integrations with Remix, for example, we are not experienced with that. Just one thing, we want to see a Superbase integration. That would be also very cool. So for these things, because we know it's a bit more effort to bring this to life, we said, okay, let's have a really cool price. The price is a MacBook Pro, so a brand new MacBook that you can win. And this is also, we just launched it yesterday. We accept submissions starting October 10, so next week. And there will be 2 webinars slash workshops next week also happening under the umbrella of Hack Squad. One is a bit deeper, deeper explanation of passkey than we had today. I will do that, and also we will have Daniel. I hope this works out. We will have Daniel doing a workshop. Daniel is one of the, or I think the core team lead of Nuxt. So Daniel will do this workshop. This is also an honor to bring them there and to moderate and demo this building a Nuxt app with passkey authentication. So
Perfect.
these 2 things will happen next week, and we look forward to a very busy October.
That sounds definitely very interesting. We are definitely running out of time though, and I think there's a lot more questions that that we can have that we can talk about in the next episode when we meet. Sorry, I'm cooking here for everyone's context. The temperature right now over here is like 38 degrees Celsius with 65% humidity. We've got construction going on next door. So if you've seen me kind of frantically like losing chain of thought or drinking tons of water, I do apologize. But Felix, I was about to call you Felix. Before I go completely cuckoo, thank you very much. We do have a lot more to talk about, and we'll be very, very excited to bring you on. If anybody is wondering about Hanko, hanko.io, Felix mentioned there's a lot of cool stuff going on this month, October 2023, for a lot of the hackathon-based stuff. We'll try and catch up with you again in the next few months, just to see how the hackathon went and how some of the progress that you've made over the last few months has gone. Also to cover some of the last remaining questions, or the questions that develop over the next few months. But Felix, thank you very much for joining. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you would share with anyone?
I think for today it's enough. It was
a lot of wisdom.
Very cool chatting with you. Had a great time. Thank you, Omar. And I like this format that you set up. It's cool. It's fun being here.
Thank you. I'm not too serious. If you guys meet me in real life, you will hear more dad jokes than I don't know what. But yeah,
don't hold back with me. I like that jokes.
I think it's important to just be open and share things as we normally are. I'm usually crazy. My thoughts will go off in a million directions. I don't generally have a plan when it comes to interviews and stuff or meeting people. And I think the best conversations and the truest conversations come out when stuff isn't pre-planned and stuff isn't done. Yeah. So I'm very thankful that Felix agreed to kind of jump on here. I had one founder send me a message like, hey, can you send me a list of questions? And I was like, sure. What's your favorite topping on pizza? And that's it. That's the only question I'll provide to anyone. But Felix, thank you very much for coming in, and thanks for answering a lot of questions. I think there's a lot of cool wisdom that we can still kind of discover and pass along in future episodes. Yes. Good luck with your amazing hackathon. It sounds really, really cool. I am very jealous because I am so busy and I want to take part in so many cool hackathons. And I'm just like, no, Omar, just focus. Get on Inbox out. So, get Omar, it done. Get it out.
You can participate in our hackathon at least, because the only thing you have to do is provide us with a GitHub link to your repo. So as soon as you launch it, you can participate. Maybe.
I don't know. Well, I mean, it's okay. I also have a lot of cool things to focus on right now as well. But yeah, thank you very much, Felix. I am very happy that we managed to do this, and I'm excited for our next calls.
Awesome, me too. Now jump into the ocean.
Now, yeah, now is like I need to find some water and go and cool off because
Do it.
like luckily the lighting in the room is making like the sweat just disappear. But trust me, guys, this is I will catch you all another time. Thank you very much.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.